EFCC denies invading home of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Senate leader speaks in approval of minimum wage bill and 2019 budget. In international news, British Prime Minister Theresa May loses Brexit vote in Parliament, faces confidence vote. And in sport, Flying Eagles to play Saudi Arabia in an international friendly game ahead of next month's Africa Under-20 Cup of Nations in Niger Republic.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has denied reports that its operatives had invaded the residence of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Walter Innoghen. ANN's Lucy Adeyemi has the details.
EFCC spokesperson Tony Orilade said in Abuja on Tuesday that the story was untrue, that EFCC personnel invaded Justice Walter Innoghen's house. He said the fake story is being spread by mischief makers. The commission also said it will file a libel lawsuit against former Aviation Minister of State Fani-Kayode for spreading what it called fake news. Fani-Kayode had earlier posted on his Twitter page that EFCC personnel, whom he called Buhari's dogs, had surrounded Innoghen's home seeking to arrest him. Fani-Kayode's tweet reads, quote, "Why have the EFCC surrounded the home of CJ and Innoghen, and why are they seeking to arrest him?" The tweet continued, quote, "These people want Nigeria to burn. Buhari, call off your dogs before it's too late. This is a democracy and not a despotic state. In the name of God, let this madness stop," end quote. The federal government had filed 6 charges of non-declaration of assets against the Chief Justice at the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Meanwhile, Chief Justice Innoghen's senior media aide, Awansam Bassi, has also called the report false news, saying the source of the report is unclear. Justice Innoghen has also commented that the Code of Conduct Tribunal has no authority to try him. Fani-Kayode has apologized to the EFCC for the false post. He said a usually reliable source provided the information which he has since removed from his page. Lucy Adeyemi, ANN News.
He was already in a handover takeover ceremony in Lagos following an order to report to a new post in Abuja. But then another order from Abuja disrupted the ceremonies, instructing Lagos State Police Commissioner Innoghen Edgar to remain in his post. Journalists were stunned when Edgar announced the new directive. The police commissioner said the first job of the force is about order and direction, and that as a result of the new directive, there would be no change of guard. So it was a case of new commissioner of police that didn't happen. Kayode Egbetokun, to whom Edgar almost handed over, had to return to his almost old post. Senate leader Senator Ahmed Lawa says the National Assembly will prioritize action on the 2019 budget and the passage of the new minimum wage bill when it resumes. It said even with the time constraints posed by preparations for the general elections, the Senate would still work extensively on the bills within the available time. Lawan promised that the senators would work hard to pass the bills he said are fundamental to the revamping of the economy. Lawan said it is important that the Senate pass the minimum wage bill to bring relief to workers and ensure stability in the workforce. Meanwhile, Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai says the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, cannot impose a minimum wage figure on state governors. El-Rufai said the government has other functions than paying salaries of a few workers. He said the state government also invests in the future. The governor said state governments have limited resources with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 states. He said Labour cannot force on a state government a wage level that exceeds its sustainable revenues. President Muhammad Buhari had recently set up a technical advisory committee on the implementation of the new national minimum wage. He reaffirmed then the federal government's commitments to the payment of the new minimum wage. He also said the federal government will review the wages of those earning more than the 30,000 naira figure to align with the new minimum wage level. NLC President Ayuba Waba says Labour would resist any plan to tamper with workers' legitimate salaries under the pretext of implementing the new minimum wage. The federal government has been asked to develop policies that would help increase local ship ownership, that would help in the training of Nigeria's seafarers. Currently, there are no locally owned ships operating in international waters. This call was made in Abuja on Tuesday by Umfon Ekong Usoro, Secretary General of the Abuja MOU on Port State Control for West and Central African Region. She said the absence of locally owned vessels trading at international stage has reduced opportunities for hand-on experience for Nigerian seafarers. Usoro said this has reduced the abilities of Nigerian seafarers to compete against their contemporaries around the world in areas of international shipping. She called on IMASA to invest in a training ship like that of South Africa's SAMSA and create berths for sea training for Nigerian seafarers. The Central Bank of Nigeria and the Securities Exchange Commission have granted an approval in principle to Access Bank and Diamond Bank on their proposed merger. An Access Bank Executive Director, Victor Itoku, says the banks were expecting the final approval to come after the bank's shareholders' meetings. Itoku says the banks have received 2 of 3 approvals needed for the process and that the final approval would be completed in the next 60 days. Itoku said the new bank that would emerge after the merger would focus on retail and corporate banking. Robert Goes, in charge of retail at Diamond Bank, says customers will be able to use automated teller machines, ATM, of either bank at no cost. Boko Haram has not let up in its campaign of violence as it attacked a military base in Ran, Borno State. The terrorist group set fires on shelters of those displaced by the conflict. Military and humanitarian sources report that the attack in Ran, 175 kilometers from Maiduguri, was launched on Monday afternoon, causing pandemonium and forcing civilians to flee. This latest Boko Haram action is seen as an effort by the Islamic State West Africa province to disprove government claims that it had been defeated. The group had also attempted to take over a military base in Magumeri, 50 kilometers northwest of Maiduguri on Sunday. International Organization for Migration says there are currently 35,000 internally displaced persons in Ran. The organization says the attack has worsened the already poor humanitarian situation on the ground there. Coming up, African stories. Death toll from Nairobi hotel attack rises to 24. And later, international news, British Prime Minister loses Brexit vote in Parliament. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to stories making news across the continent. The Kenyan government says security situation in the country is under control after an unknown number of terrorists attacked an upmarket hotel and office complex in the capital, Nairobi. At least 24 persons were killed. Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i says security teams have evacuated scores of Kenyans and other nationalities from the buildings after a 9-hour operation. He said the government was in the final stages of mopping up the area, securing evidence and documenting the consequences of the unfortunate event. He also assured citizens and the international community that the country is now secure. Gunmen armed with rifles and grenades drove to the hotel in broad daylight and began shooting aimlessly. Al-Shabaab terrorist group has claimed responsibility for the attack. In the wake of economic troubles in Zimbabwe caused by a fuel hike and cash shortages, government has now shut down internet services. The country's largest mobile operator, Econet Wireless, said on Wednesday its internet services had been cut off following government order amid deadly protests in the country. It says all networks and providers had suspended their services as well. 3 persons, including a police officer, had died during Monday's demonstrations called by the main labor union in the capital and second city, Bulawayo, to protest a sharp rise in the price of fuel and economic hardship. Internet services were cut by mid-morning on Tuesday, leaving many people without access to social media platforms, amid accusations that the government wanted to prevent images of its heavy-handedness from being broadcast around the world. Meanwhile, the general strike continues for a 3rd day on Wednesday. Streets are reported deserted in the capital, Harare. The African Union, AU, is aiming to raise $100 million from member states for its peace fund. In the long run, the AU wants to self-sponsor its peace efforts across the continent, so it established the peace fund with $60 million in initial contributions. Now the AU says its goal is to raise $100 million.
We have recorded $60 million contribution by African member states to Peace Fund. This represents the highest contribution since its establishment, and based on additional commitment expressed during the last Assembly of Heads of State, we are projecting to reach $100 million US contribution by early 2019.
AU Chegwa said the funds will finance mediation, institutional capacity building, and the initial deployment of peace support operation efforts. The AU Peace Fund was established in 1993 as a principal financing instrument for the peace and security activities of the Organization of African Unity, the predecessor body of the AU. Near-daily demonstrations in the Sudan, triggered by a worsening economic crisis, have spread across the country since December. Hundreds of protesters turned out to demonstrate against President Omar al-Bashir's rule in a densely populated neighborhood in the capital, Khartoum, on Tuesday, before being dispersed by security forces. Security forces fired tear gas and chased demonstrators down side streets. Authorities confirmed 24 persons have been killed in the nationwide march. President al-Bashir insisted on Monday he would not step down. He said Sudan's economic problems would not be solved by protest. Political tensions in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have affected many businesses in the country. Many investors have been scared away as the fear post-election violence could erupt after the December presidential polls. Many small businesses in the capital, Kinshasa, closed for fear of post-election violence. The situation was not helped by the government's decision to shut down internet services.
Watu weko naogopa, asema watapiga minduki, mambo itakuwa maajabu, haitaonekana mzuri. Bashinwa baende wanafunga vitu vyabo, bengine wanatoka wanaenda Brazza, wanakimbia Kongo.
Last week's announcement of Felix Tshisekedi as winner of the election has somewhat calmed tensions. The word ban projected that the DRC's economy will grow by almost 4% this year. But that target is unlikely to be met with the kind of tensions the elections have caused. Small-scale businesses owners are now optimistic that the economy will bounce back now that the country has a new leader. When we return, international news. British Prime Minister Theresa May faces confidence vote after losing Brexit vote in Parliament. And later sport, Flying Eagles to play Saudi Arabia in an international friendly game ahead of next month's Africa Under-20 Cup of Nations.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie, drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it known for your hand, that's Palasa phone.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and international news. UK Brexit is in crisis, and the British Parliament voted down Prime Minister Theresa May's EU deal on leaving the Union. This development now opens up a can of worms and options ranging from a disorderly exit and not exiting at all. Theresa May's government now faces a vote of no confidence, launched by Labour after MPs rejected the Brexit deal by 230 votes. Some Parliament watchers and one senior party figure are predicting she will survive the confidence vote. Northern Ireland's DUP and Tory rebels say they will back the Prime Minister. May has told MPs she will return to the Commons with an alternative plan next week if she survives the confidence vote. The United States and Britain have conducted their first joint naval drills in the disputed South China Sea since China built island bases there. A U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyer, the USS McCampbell, which is based in Japan, and a Royal Navy frigate, HMS Argyll, which is on the tour of Asia, conducted communication drills and other exercises from Friday to Wednesday to address common security priorities. No such joint drills have been conducted there since at least 2010. The exercise comes after another British warship, the 22,000-ton HMS Albion, sailed close to the Parcel Island chain claimed by China in the South China Sea in August. It was the first time Britain had directly challenged China's growing control of the strategic waterway. A trial witness has disclosed that Mexico's former president, Enrique Peña Nieto, took $100 million in bribes from Joaquin Guzman Lorena. Malaysia's Foreign Minister Saifuddin Abdullah has announced that the country will not host any future events involving Israel. Abdullah also said the Malaysian government will not budge over a ban on Israeli athletes in a para-swimming competition. The event in July serves as a qualifier for the 2020 Tokyo Paralympics, and the foreign minister said the cabinet affirmed last week that no Israeli delegates can enter Malaysia after sporting or other events. He added that Malaysia also decided not to host any more events involving Israel to reflect the government's firm stance over the Israeli issue. And the Bank of China, one of the country's biggest lenders, has offered a loan of $300 million to Sri Lanka with the option of increasing the amount of $1 billion. The offer came as Colombo faces an economic crisis triggered by political uncertainty in the South Asian island nation. He also confirmed that Sri Lanka had started negotiations to increase the amount of a swap deal with India's central bank to $1 billion, up from a previously negotiated $400 million. Bank of China has not confirmed the loan offer. Still ahead, sports. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow the story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sports. The Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, has disclosed that the under-20 national team, the Flying Eagles, will be in Jeddah this weekend for an international friendly game against Saudi Arabia next week. The match is designed to toughen the team ahead of next month's Africa Under-20 Cup of Nations in Niger Republic. The match will also rekindle memories of the opening match of the 1989 FIFA Under-20 World Cup finals, in which the Flying Eagles came from behind to defeat the Saudis 2-1 inside the King Fahd International Stadium in February 1989. UEFA has begun disciplinary proceedings against Chelsea following alleged anti-Semitic chanting during the club's Europa League match at Hungarian club Vidi last month. A vocal minority of Chelsea fans was heard singing a derogatory chant against Tottenham supporters featuring anti-Semitic language during the 2-2 draw at the Groupama Arena in Budapest. Chelsea has been accused of racist chants, with 4 supporters banned pending an investigation of alleged racist insult directed at Raheem Sterling during the Blues' 2-0 win over Premier League champions Manchester City in early December. And that's ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and all the stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.